Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. Today we'll be taking a look at the Flip Box, one of the widgets from the Qi Addons for Elementor Premium collection. As you might have guessed from its name, this widget will help you create flip boxes. But these won't be any plain old flip boxes. We have a few examples on this page illustrating the things you can create with this widget. For starters, you can choose the direction in which the boxes will flip. So when I hover over the nearest one, it flips to the right, rotating along its vertical axis. When we move to the next one, it flips upwards, so it moves along its horizontal axis. And the last one flips to the left. There's also the possibility of setting it to flip downwards, so you can choose the direction of the box's movement. If we keep moving down the page, we have an example with a much subtler switch. The boxes slide up or down without a noticeable flip. Then you have something like this, where an overlay seems to appear with new content to cover the old. These are all different ways that the flip side content can be displayed. However, that's not all. You can combine that with different triggers for the boxes, such as the one we see here. Whereas before, hovering was enough to trigger the box change, here you have the possibility of adding a button. And when visitors click on that button, the box will reveal its secondary content. Then we have something different again. The box is triggered on hover, but the switch is accompanied by an overlay for the rest of the page. Below that, there's a new combination of settings shown. This is a box that reacts when you click on it, and the switch happens with a zoom effect. The other examples here also showcase different ways you can mix the flip box widget settings to create an endless variety of design solutions. But what exactly are those options? We're about to see that now. Head over to the back end. I created a new page to work in, and within it I created two columns at the top. I removed the header and title areas, as well as any margins and paddings, so that the section with the flip boxes will be at the very top. The design I'll be making is going to take up the majority of the view screen, and I wanted it to remain fully visible throughout the tutorial. Okay, let me add the widget to the page. I'll search for it in the sidebar. There it is. Drag it over to the page. I've just dropped my widget on the page without aiming for the column I prepped because it's going to be easier to place it where I want it to be with the navigator. So, over in the navigator, I'll just click and drag my flip box to the right place. Perfect. I can also delete the section that was created when I dropped the widget randomly. Alright. Now what we're seeing on the page is the widget's default look with the dummy content that serves as a placeholder. And this box already has a flip side that we can see when we hover over it. I'll click on the widget so that its options open in the sidebar on the left. And then we're going to start customizing our flip box. We'll do that beginning with the options in the Content tab. Here we can set the height for our box. So if you want to make it taller, then you can drag the slider here until you reach your desired height. Or you can type in a value if you have a specific one in mind. I do, so I'll set 800 pixels here. After that, we have the width option. It's just what you might expect, a way to set the width of your element. I'll clear this change I made. Without it, the flip box will take up the full width of the column it's occupying. Next, we have the border radius. With this option, we can round out the corners of the element. Even though it's called border radius, you don't need to have a border for it to work. For example, I'll put 50 pixels for the radius. And we can see how that got the corners to become curved. Additionally, you can adjust each corner separately if you click here to disconnect the input fields. Then you can set different values for different sides. For example, I'll put 70 pixels for my top right corner. And there, it's the only one that got changed. The rest have stayed the same. Alright, I'll replace the changed value with 0 and link the fields again. I want the corners to stay sharp. Since that's the default setting, I'll clear the field to restore it. Okay, next we have the trigger option. This is where we pick the action that will flip the box. By default, it's set to flip on hover, and you can see how it looks here. But we can pick something different instead. There's the click setting. With this one, I can hover, but nothing will change. We can see the cursor indicates this is a clickable element, and when I do click, the box flips to reveal its other side. Besides the click, we also have the button setting. With that one, a button appears in the corner, and clicking on the button makes the box flip. And with this setting, the box will stay that way until we click the button again to flip it back. In case you decide to use the button, I just want to mention that you can replace the default button icon. When you open the front side settings and scroll down a bit, you'll find the field for uploading a new trigger button icon. You can pick something from the extensive icon library collection or upload a custom SVG icon. It's up to you how you want to customize it. However, I don't plan on using the button setting, so I'll go back to the trigger option and return the setting to hover. After that, we can pick the animation type, or the effect that appears when the box flips. The default setting is flip, and it looks like this. Then we have flip whole, which looks like this. Then there's slide over, so we get this effect. After that, there's pull. It gets us this look. Following that, we have switch, which looks like this. Then fade, which gives us a more subtle change. Okay, then there's zoom in, and it creates this effect. Finally, we have zoom out, and it looks like this. So there are a lot of possibilities. For my design, I'll be using slide over. This is the effect. And once we've set that, we can pick the animation direction. By default, the box slides in from the left, but we can replace that with right, which looks like this. Alternatively, there's up, where the box slides up, and down, where the box slides down. And this is the direction I'll be using for my animation type. After that, we have the duration option. It allows us to set the duration of the animation effect. The value is in milliseconds, so if I enter 200 here, the slide becomes so quick it's almost abrupt. You can fine-tune this however you like, but I'll set the default 750 milliseconds back. And my slide is nice and smooth again. This brings us to the last option in the general section, the overlay. I'll switch it on so we can see what it does. When we hover over the box, the entire page around the box gets an overlay, allowing our attention to stay fixed on the flip box and its content. Granted, it's a bit difficult to tell that the box itself doesn't get an overlay because of the similarity in the default colors. But if I move over to the Style tab and then open the Overlay Style section, we have two options for adjusting its look. Using background type, I'll pick Classic just to show you. We can set an image or a color to act as our overlay. I'll pick a color simply to show you the change. And when I move over the box, the overlay covers the page and is clearly distinct from the box itself. And if you want to make the overlay, whether you're using a color or image, less opaque, we have the option for adjusting opacity below. So you can have more of a tinted look for the page overlay if you like. Alright, I'll go back to the Content tab and switch the overlay off because I don't plan on using it for my design. And with that, the first section of the options is done. Let's open the next one, front side. These options will help us customize the content of the front side of our flip box. Firstly, we can replace the icon. You can use something from the icon library or upload a custom icon of your own. I don't plan on using an icon for my design, but before I remove it, I want to show you the options you get for styling it. So let's hop over to the Style tab and open the front icon style section. The options you see here are identical to the options you get for styling the icon on the back side of the box. If I open the section for back icon style, you can see the same options here as well. So I'll go through one set of options with you, these in the front icon style, so you can see what they do. By the way, the icon on the back side of the box is the same one we see on the front. So these icons could look the same if you use identical settings for the front and back icon styles. Or they could look completely different if you use different settings. Now let's see the options we have here. First, there's icon boxed. It's disabled by default, so our icon is not contained within a specific box. But if we switch it on by picking yes, then we'll get a whole set of options for styling that box. I'll keep this enabled so we can cover those additional options too. After icon boxed, we have icon size. It's very straightforward. The larger the value you set, the larger your icon. Then we have icon color, for changing the color of our icon. I'll set something random. After that, we have the icon background color, and it applies to the box that contains the icon. So when I pick a color here, the box changes colors. And if I hover to make the box flip, you can see none of these changes affect the backside, so it's easy to keep the styling separate if you want. Alright, next we have the icon border color. I'll pick a new color here to make the border visible. As you can see, changing colors is very simple. Next, we can adjust the icon box size. You can do that by using the slider or by typing in a new value, and the box will change without affecting the icon size. Then we can change the icon border size. Basically, we can make the border thicker if we want to. And finally, we can change the icon border radius. I'll set, say, 30 pixels. And there, the icon box got more rounded corners. If you like, you can keep increasing the radius until you get a circular look for your box. But that's just a thought. I'll clear this. And actually, I don't have to undo all these changes. I can simply go back to the Content tab and delete the icon. That way, all of this will disappear. Okay, after the icon, we can change the box title. That's the text saying front side on the page. I'll replace it simply by typing something new in here. Then we have the field for entering the descriptive text. I'll replace that too. Give me a moment while I type in the new text. There we go. The front side of the box has all new content. We'll do the same now for the back side. When we open the options, we can see they're identical to the ones we have for the front side. I'll go through the same steps here to customize this, the content on the back side of the box. I'll remove the icon, okay. Then I'll set a new title. Just a moment. Okay. After that, I'll remove the description. Just erase the placeholder content. Don't worry, this is all part of my planned design. And instead of the text here, I'll put a button. To do that, I need to add some button text. Just a sec, and add a button link. I'll use a hashtag here since this is just for the tutorial. But in real-life conditions, you'd add a proper URL here. Alright. And now when I check on the box, the backside shows the new content I set, button included. This brings us to the next section of the options, button. The options here will help you customize the look of your button, or buttons if you're using them. I won't go into detail with these options since the Qi Addons have the button as a standalone widget and there's a separate tutorial explaining all the settings for it. If you need more information about any of the options you see here, you can check out the Qi button tutorial that I've linked in the corner, as well as in the description below. Since I'm using a button for my design, I'll quickly make the settings I need for it. The layout will stay filled. The button type will remain standard. I don't need to enable the button text underline in this instance, and the button size can stay normal. I haven't changed anything, but just as a reminder, this is what the button looks like with its current settings. Then, over in the next section, button icon, I'll add a custom icon to my button text. I have the one I want in my media library. Select and insert media. And if I check on the button, it's there. Perfect. Now, if we like, we can change the icon position. If I set it to the left, this is what it would look like. But given the icon shape, keeping it on the right makes more sense, so I'll switch the setting back and check on the button. Okay, just as it should be. After this, we have the Developer Tools section. It contains an option you get with all of our widgets. If you switch it to yes, it will display the widget in the form of a WordPress shortcode, the slight gray text you see on the page. Then you can easily copy the text for use elsewhere on your site. Alright, I'll switch this back. And under that, we have the Help section. It contains links to various helpful resources, from the widget showcase page to a link to our Help Center in case you need them. And that's all for the Content tab. Let's take a look at the Style tab now. The first section here is for styling the front side of the box. To start with, we can adjust the padding for the flip box holder. For example, if I set 70 pixels, this will add the same amount of space to all sides of the box content. Okay, it's going to be a bit awkward to indicate things with my cursor while the box is flipping, but I trust you can follow along nonetheless. For my padding, I'll clear this because I don't want identical settings, and I'll disconnect the fields. But before that, I'll switch the text alignment from left to center. And now when I disconnect the fields, I'll remove any default padding I had. I only want to add 82 pixels at the top of my content. There we go. After the padding, the next option is the horizontal alignment. It applies to the title only. By default, it's in the center, but we can move it to the left, which is flex start, move it back to the center, or move it to the right, which is flex end. I'll put mine in the center. Next, we have the vertical alignment option. Again, the default setting is center, but we can set it to be at the top of the box, padding included, put it back in the center, or move it to the bottom of the box. Here I'll use the flex start setting. Then we have the text alignment. I already adjusted this from the original left alignment to center my text, but if you want, you can move it to the right. I'll put mine back in the center. Following that, we can set the background type. There are a few possibilities. One is classic. With this one, we can pick an image or a color for the box background. For example, if I set a color, this is what it might look like. Of the other background types, we have gradient. With that one, we can create a 2-color gradient background for the box. Let me show you. We already have a provisional second color set, but I need to pick the first color for the gradient to show. I'll use, no, too similar, something lighter. Okay, now we can see the gradient we get with these two pinkish colors. In terms of further stylization, we can adjust the location or the coverage for each color. You have a location option for each one. But mind you, the value for the second location needs to be higher than the first if you want to keep the gradient transition. Otherwise, the colors will just meet without blending. Next, we have the gradient type. If we decide to keep the linear setting rather than switching it to radial, then we can choose the angle at which the colors will meet. You have the full 360 degrees to pick from. However, if you prefer the radial gradient type, then we'll have an origin point for the first color and be able to pick its position within the box. But besides the gradient, we have one more possibility for the background type, and it's video. With this one, you can use a video from a link, just add the URL. And then you can adjust things like the video start time, end time, whether it plays only once, and so on. Depending on your design, you can really tailor the settings to your preference. But for the design I'm making, I'll go back to the classic background type and clear the color because I want to use an image as the background. Click to upload. This is the one I want. Select. And there it is. Now there are a few things we can adjust for the image. You can pick what image size you want for the display. There's a wide variety of settings. I'll keep mine set to full since the existing image dimensions and box width work well together. Then for the position, I want to move it to be center. Perfect. Then the attachment option, which determines how the image will behave on scroll, can keep its default setting. That would be scroll. With that one, the image would scroll with the page and the rest of its content. The alternative is fixed, and in that case the image won't move with the rest of the page, it will stay fixed. Following that, the repeat lets us set if the image should repeat within its given space. If you have a smaller image, you can create a wallpaper-like effect. But for my image, I'll use the no repeat setting. And finally, the display size option will specify the size of the background image. The auto setting is the default one. It keeps the image displayed in its original size. The cover setting will resize the image to cover the entire element, even if it has to cut something off or stretch the image out. The contain setting will resize the image to make it fully visible. To make it fully visible in its original proportions, no stretching it out of shape. Finally, the custom setting is just what it says, a possibility to manually enter your desired image size. For this, I'll use the cover setting. And that's it for the image settings. Next, we have the content background color. We can use it to change the color of just the band containing the text. Let me demonstrate. If I set a color, there. It changes only the text background while leaving the rest of the box as is. To go with this, you can adjust the content padding. If I set a relatively large value, it's going to expand how much space the text background gets. I don't plan to use this, so I'll clear the changes. Give me a moment. Okay, and there. With this, we cover the front side style section of the options and we can move on. The next section is one that we've already gone over, front icon style. We've seen the options, and since I no longer have an icon, there's no need to go into them again. The same goes for the back icon style section. But between these two, we have the front typography style. This is for styling the text content on the front side of the box. Firstly, we can pick the title tag. You have different HTML tags to choose from. I'll leave my title set to the default. Then we can change the title color. It has this familiar color picker where I'll use the hex code input field to set the specific shade of reddish orange that I want. There. And I'll copy the code since I plan on using it for other bits of content too. Next, we have the title typography settings. There's a variety of things you can do here. For starters, you can change the font family for the title. I have a specific one in mind. There it is. Then you can change the font size. I'll set 60 to make the title much larger. Then we have the font weight, where you can pick any of these settings to make your title text lighter or bolder. I'll stick with the default setting. Next, we have the option to transform the title. I'll switch mine to uppercase. Following that, the style option can be used to turn the title italic or oblique if that's something you're interested in. I'll set italic for mine. After that, the decoration option can be used for adding a line over, under, or through the text. I won't be using this. Finally, there are 3 options for adjusting typography spacing: the line height, letter spacing, and word spacing options. They do exactly what their names suggest. And that's it for the typography settings. I'll close this now. After that, we have the title padding. I'll disconnect the field so I can enter 40 pixels for the top side and leave the others set to 0. There we go. Then we have the options for styling the front description. That's the text under the title. And the options we have for it are pretty similar to the ones above. We can change the description color. You can use the slider to set the color you want or enter a hex code. I have the one I copied earlier. And now my title and descriptive text match. Then we have the typography options for the description. Since we've already seen what options are included in this bundle, I'll make the changes I need without explaining them again. So for my design, I want to change the size to 23 pixels and increase the line height by setting 33 pixels. Alright. Next, there's the description padding. Again, I'll disconnect the fields and only enter some padding for the top side. Specifically 20 pixels. Okay. After this, we have the backside style section, where we can style how the backside of the box will look. Currently, it's like this. And since these options are identical to the ones we had for styling the front side of the box, there's no need to go over them again. I'll simply change what I need for my design and we'll move on. I won't be adding any padding here, and I'll leave the horizontal alignment set to the center, but I'll move the vertical alignment to flex end, or the bottom of the box. I'll leave the text alignment be since I don't have any descriptive text on the backside, so it won't have any effect. But I do want to add a background image, so I'll need the classic background type. And then I can upload the image I want from my media library. This is it. Select. Now if I check on the back side, this is what it looks like. Pretty neat. Still, there are some image settings I need to make. Pretty much like before, I'll keep the image size set to full. I'll change the position to center. The attachment will stay as default. But I'll switch the repeat to no repeat. And for the display size, I'll set cover. Alright, let's see the back side of the box now. Great. One more thing I want to adjust, the content padding. I want to move the title and button a bit further away from the bottom of the page. So I'll disconnect the fields and enter 110 pixels for the bottom side padding. And if I check on it now, much better. After this, we have the back icon style section. But since I removed my icon and we already examined these options using the front icon style section, we'll move on to the back typography style. When we open it, we can see it's a lot like the front typography style section. Using the options here, I'll be styling my title text. This. Since I removed my descriptive text, that's all I have until we reach the section for the button. Okay, I'll quickly run through the changes since the options should be familiar by now. The title tag will stay as default. For title color, I'll paste the hex code for the color I've been using for the text on the front side of the box. And if we look, there it is. Then I'll need the title typography. I'll change the font family to match the front title. Just a sec. There it is. Then I'll increase the size to 60 pixels. After that, I'll transform the title to uppercase and switch the style to italic. And that's it for the typography changes I wanted to make to my back title. Let's make sure it's all there. Yes, perfect. Following that, there's the title padding, where I'll disconnect the field so I can increase the bottom padding to 22 pixels. As you can see, this has created more space between the title and the button underneath it. Alright. I'll be skipping the options for styling the description since I don't have one, which means we can open the button style options. And with them, we'll be adjusting the look of this button to something that better matches the rest of my box design. I'll make most of the changes before we check on the button again. It'll be more efficient what with having to flip the box. Okay, firstly we have the typography settings for the button text. I'll set the size to 16 pixels and the weight to 500 medium, and I'll leave the rest unchanged. Next, we have a split in the options. One set is for the normal button display, and the other is for the display when someone hovers over the button. Starting with the options for normal, we can set the button text color. For this, I'll use the same hex code as earlier. And okay. Then for background color, I'll set plain white. There we go. And I don't plan on adding a border, so I won't need the border color or the border width options. Let's see what the button looks like now. Pretty nice, except I see that there is a bit of a radius. The button corners aren't perfectly sharp. So I'll adjust the radius to remove that. Simply set 0 and there, a perfectly rectangular button. Before I move on to adjust its padding, I want us to take a quick look at the hover options. As you can see, the options here are pretty much identical to those under normal. I don't plan on making any changes to them. This will allow my button to stay the same when viewed normally and on hover. However, if you set something different, you do have the reveal background option that lets you add a transition effect between the normal and hover button looks. Alright, circling back to the padding option. This allows us to adjust the padding for the button content, meaning text and icon in my case. I'll modify it slightly. Give me a moment while I take care of that. 14, 40, 13, and 40 again. And now if we look at the button, it's slightly less elongated while leaving plenty of room for its content. The next thing we can do for the button is style the icon we added to it. In my case, that's this icon here. I only have a few slight modifications I want to make to it. I'll set the size to 11 pixels. Then we have the split in the options between normal and hover. Under normal, we can change the icon color, but the icon takes on the text color by default, and I want to keep it that way. But if you want to set a different color just for the icon, you can do so here. For example, I'll set something darker. And now the icon stands out from the text. I'll clear this. Okay. Then if we switch over to hover, we have the move icon option. It creates an animated moving effect when we hover over the button. The default setting, horizontal short, looks like this. The alternatives to that are horizontal, which looks like this, then vertical, which looks like this. We also have diagonal. It gets us this look. And finally, we can set none, and this will prevent the arrow from moving on hover. I'll go back to the original setting. There we go. Let me check the button. Alright. After that, we have the icon margin option, if we want to adjust the space around the icon alone, without affecting the button text. I'll disconnect the fields and put 2 pixels at the top and 8 pixels on the left side of the icon. Now let's see the button. The addition of the top padding pushed the icon out of alignment with the text. I better remove that. And see how the button looks now. Much better. Okay. That's it for the current section. Now the next 2 sections are dedicated to different button types. And if I open them, I won't get any options in these sections since my button doesn't have an inner border or a text underline. And I don't need to style something I'm not using. Under them, however, we have the overlay style section. If you recall from earlier in the video, we already examined the options here. So we're pretty much done with explaining the options, but I'd like to show you a different way you can combine them. We have one flip box done, fully customized and styled. Now I'm going to create a second flip box and use slightly different settings that will make that flip box both different and complementary to the first one. I'll start by duplicating the finished flip box. Now I'll drag the new flip box to the right-hand column. I'll go through the options making changes where I need. This is going to be relatively quick. You'll see that once you finish an element, each new instance will be easier to make and you'll move through the options quicker. For my second flip box, I want a different animation type. I'll set pull. That's what it looks like. and I'll change the animation direction to up. Now let's see. Okay. After that, I'll change the content for the front side. I'll speed up the video here as I have quite a bit of typing to do. Give me a moment. There, done. I'll close the navigator so we can see it better. Carrying on, we have the section for customizing the back side. But actually, I'll keep the same title and the same button text. There's nothing further in the content I want to change, so let's switch over to the Style tab. Firstly, I'll change the images. The front side one, I'll use this. Select. Okay, it'll have the same image position, attachment, and other settings as the first flip box, so I don't have to bother with that. And I can just move on to the front typography style and start changing the colors. The title will be white, and the description too. Okay, I'll proceed to the next section so I can replace the backside image. One moment. This is the one I'll be using. Select, and let's see how the box looks. Nearly done, and it's barely been a minute. Next, I want to change the title color for the back side, so back typography style, white again. Okay, there it is. I'll need to change the button text as well. That's in button style. For the button text color, I'll set plain black since I want to keep the button background white. Now if we look, there it is. And that's it. Both my flip boxes are done. I'll hit update to save my work. One last check. Perfect. Everything is as it should be. To finish up the video, I'd like us to take one last look at the page we started from. This one. It's there to provide you with examples of what you can do with this widget, and it can serve as a reference point for the different design solutions you can create. From different sized boxes to different animation types and accompanying style options, there really are so many ways you can customize and adapt this widget to fit with your site design. Additionally, the flip box is really a blank slate in terms of usefulness for different niches and purposes. Whether you're informing or advertising or simply engaging with your visitors, there's no end to the things you can do with this widget. Hopefully, this page, as well as this video tutorial, will have given you some ideas and prove to be a helpful resource in the future. Finally, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions you'd like to make, please drop us a line in the comments section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides. Thank you for watching.